Good afternoon, and welcome, distinguished guests, administrators, teachers, families, and students. I am Alex Klein-Wassing, President of the Class of 2020. It is my privilege to serve as the Master of Ceremonies for today's commencement. Thank you all for joining us for today's ceremony. At this time, I would like to invite Catherine Liu, Treasurer of the Class of 2020, to come to the stage and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Alex. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. The chamber singers will now sing the Star-Spangled Banner.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Mrs. Whitman and the chamber singers. I would now like to invite Anne Gregory, the Vice President of the Class of 2020, to the podium to deliver the salutation.
Thank you, Alex. Good evening. My name is Anne Gregory, and it is an honor and privilege to welcome you to the 2020 commencement ceremony for Joe Barlow High School. The Class of 2020 would like to recognize the individuals who have helped us achieve 4 amazing years of learning and growing. First, thank you to our administration, teachers, and school counselors for the time you have dedicated to our academic, social, and emotional well-being and success. Second, thank you to our parents, grandparents, siblings, and friends whose support and guidance has helped us shape us into the people you know and love today. I would also like to take a moment to especially thank and recognize the individuals seated on stage. Dr. Thomas McMorrin, Superintendent of Schools. Dr. Stephanie Pearson-Ugal, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction. Scott Rice, Director of Finance and Operations. And Vicki Cram, Human Resources Manager. From the Region 9 Board of Education, Todd Johnston, Chairperson. Cheryl Graziano, Vice Chairperson. Juliette Berry, Secretary. Mike D'Agostino, Treasurer. Gwen Denny, Karen O'Brien, Mary Lee Pampel, and Maureen Williams. Representing Joe Barlow High School, Dr. Gina Pinn, Assistant Superintendent and Head of School. Jennifer Damaris, Assistant Principal for the classes of 2020 and 2023. Julie Matei, Assistant Principal for the classes of 2020 and 2022. Michael Santangeli, Administrator for Athletics, Health, and Physical Education. Patricia Roscoe, Director of Special Education Services. Paula Panos, Director of School Counseling. Jessica Kennedy and Jim Devoto, Advisors for the class of 2020. From the town of Reading, Julia Pemberton, First Selectman. Dr. Phyllis Amori, Interim Principal of John Reed Middle School. Natalie Hammond, Principal of Reading Elementary School. Darlene Wallen, Assistant Principal of John Reed Middle School. And Joseph Amodio, Assistant Principal of Reading Elementary School. From the town of Easton, David Bindleglass, First Selectman. Susan Kaplan, Principal of Helen Keller Middle School. Kimberly Fox Santora, Principal of Samuel Staples Elementary School. Annie Moore, Assistant Principal of Helen Keller Middle School. And Michael Brownstein, Assistant Principal of Samuel Staples Elementary School. Class of 2020, it has been a pleasure and a privilege to serve as your Vice President. I wish you much success.
Thank you, Anne. With pleasure, I now invite Dr. Pinn, our head of school and assistant superintendent, for her address.
We have all been spending way too much time on the computer these days. Just like you, I did not sign up for an education whereby I saw and interacted with so few people in person. All of this time on the computer has prompted our technology folks to send out periodic reminders of the need to change our passwords, to be on the look for phishing, even warnings of Zoom bombing, whereby outsiders would sneak into our meetings and hijack them, or in worst case, steal our identities. Last year, my email was hacked. A teacher received a message he thought was from me that started innocently enough. The note claimed I was busy and asked the teacher if he could do me a favor. The teacher replied, of course. The next email asked the teacher to purchase some iTunes gift cards and send them to me electronically. What caught his attention was the absence of my usual salutation of be well. He told me the note just didn't sound like me. A deeper look, and he saw the return email address was different from mine by one letter. Thus, identity theft was avoided. And that got me thinking about all the ways our identities can be jeopardized in today's world. Once I started down that path, I realized that identity theft is a bigger problem than I had ever imagined. So how does one's identity get hijacked in the world today? Or maybe a better question, how do we surrender our identities to others? Although there are more, I wish to focus on 3 ways we put ourselves in danger of identity theft. Number 1, carelessness. Sometimes we move too fast. We compose and send email messages without rereading them. We react instead of respond. When we move with such speed, sometimes we call it efficiency, we risk compromising our identity. Instead of carefully choosing each word, we race through our correspondence and open the door for others to draw conclusions about our identity. We forget to pause and think about how our true self would respond. What if that email message or this conversation were the last words you would ever hear me utter? Is this how I want my identity to be remembered? Number 2, bullies. We allow the situation to change us instead of leaning in and changing the situation. As a female leader, I feel like I walk a special line. If I lean in too far, I'm thought of as aggressive, or a word that rhymes with witch. If I pull back and stay in the background, I may be praised for my restraint, but my identity does not live in the background. We all encounter bullies in our lives who try to steal our identity and put us in stereotypical boxes. How to confront these folks? Cement shoes. No, not for them, but for us. Hold tight inside your shoes. Stand up to those around us who believe that putting us down is the only way to bolster their own sense of identity. Disarm those bullies with no apologies, no defensiveness, just data and maybe inquiry. This lesson was brought home for me when I was working with students years ago on bullying and mean behavior. We were role-playing, and the student who was playing the role of the bully was directed to make fun of his peer. The student embraced his role, and he pointed to the shoes of his classmate. He went off on a rant about how lame they were. The targeted student stood his ground, and he looked at his shabby shoes. "You know," he said slowly, "they are wicked comfortable. Where do you buy your shoes?" The two of them then got into a conversation about sneakers. The opinions of others should not hold sway over who we are and what we believe to be true about ourselves. Get comfortable in your own shoes because they fit you, not because they're what others expect you to wear. And that takes us to the 3rd way we abandon our identity. Number 3, the path gets difficult. It is hard not to compromise our identity when the going gets tough. The path of least resistance might lead us to give up too quickly for the good of those around us. It's often easier to retreat or perhaps even agree when we don't really mean it. Sometimes it's tempting to give up our search for identity altogether and just conform to what others expect us to be. Like many of you, I have been reading for pleasure during this quarantine, and I returned to my favorite J.R.R. Tolkien, The Lord of the Rings trilogy. Now, 95% of the time, books are far superior, in my opinion, to the movie versions. But Peter Jackson added a scene at the end of the Two Towers movie adaptation that was truly inspiring. It was a monologue Samwise Gamgee recited. It's like in the great stories, Mr. Frodo, the ones that really mattered, full of darkness and danger they were. And sometimes you didn't want to know the end because how could the end be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad had happened? But in the end, it is only a passing thing, this shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come, and when the sun shines, it will shine out all the clearer. Those were the stories that stayed with you, that meant something, even if you were too small to understand why. But I think, Mr. Frodo, I do understand. I know now. Folks in those stories, they had lots of chances of turning back. Only they didn't, because they were holding on to something. That there's something good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for. Class of 2020, you are the good in the world that's worth fighting for. The world needs you not to turn your back on the injustices that surround you. You need to hold on to who you are and what you believe. Embrace your identity and never let anyone convince you that your voice will not make a difference. It will. It already has. Thank you for being a model of resiliency and compassionate problem solving for Joel Barlow High School. This has been such an unusual ending to the year, and since we've had to adapt and adjust our ceremony, we took liberties to add just one more speaker to this ceremony. Ms. Jennifer Damaris has been your assistant principal since you were freshmen. As a teacher of history before she shifted to the dark side of administration, and an eyewitness to the path you have traveled through Joel Barlow High School, it is my pleasure to welcome her to the podium for this address.
I am honored to speak to you, Barlow's class of 2020. It is only because you all hold a special place in my heart that I am compelled to take a risk and share some parting words, a risk that I was unwilling to take in 1983 when asked to address my own graduating class. Growth happens. I have been speaking to you from my car each day as I drive to and from Barlow. The best versions now lost in the ether. An apt occurrence in 2020. So much has been lost. Things much more important than a speech given by your assistant principal. A prom, a real graduation ceremony, a trip to Agawam, Massachusetts, the last time with an influential and respected teacher, hanging with Ms. Wallace in the Career Center, that last season on the field or court, and time with friends. Surreal. Time just stopped. Traffic ceased. A trip to the grocery store required planning and more patience than usual. In a time of national tragedy, we were told to stay apart, not commune, to isolate. Those who lost family to the pandemic continue to seek closure. Now things are starting to normalize. Harding's post-World War I promise, a return to normalcy, is what we all desire. We know that normalcy did not return after World War I, and it will not return to us. So what is next? A challenge. A challenge has been issued to your generation. Not a graduation platitude challenge. A summons to use your skills, intellect, and passions to solve complex problems, to find that next vaccine, to make a more perfect union, to demonstrate the same care you exhibited for classmates to a wider world. At Barlow, we embrace the 3 C's: community, communication, and complexity. I want to take a moment to unpack some of what lies beneath each and challenge you to use the skills and knowledge honed over these past 13 or so years, to think, to act, to grow. Let's start with complexity. What does it look like outside of Barlow's protected walls? Today, your teachers attest that you possess the abilities to think critically, to problem solve, to grapple with ambiguities, to take risks, and engage in intellectual inquiry. Since we left the building in March, our nation has battled a worldwide pandemic, experienced unemployment rates paralleling those recorded during the Great Depression, and watched fellow citizens take to the streets to march for values they hold so dear. What is a citizen to do? It is an opportunity for you to use the skills and knowledge acquired within these Pepto-Bismol spackled walls. This is where I get to share some advice, a staple of graduation speeches. Ask genuine questions. Ask uncomfortable questions. Reserve judgment and just ask. Ask questions of those who hold ideas that challenge your norms. Seek understanding. Refrain from asking what I call competitive questions. Questions conceived and asked only to belittle or destroy the thinking of another. Voltaire advised that one should judge a man by his questions rather than by his answers. Your questions demonstrate your interest, your character. Voltaire was right. A person who genuinely asks questions seeking truths, demonstrates compassion. Seek knowledge, seek justice through your questions. Seek truth, research, rely on facts to buttress your opinions. Do not take the lazy way out by jumping to a preferred webcast, opinion page, or talking heads for your news. Seek sources that offer differing opinions. Confirmation bias feels good in the moment, but is debilitating to a society. Our country's greatness has been forged through compromise. It is diminished by extremism in any form. Seek compromise. Do not use the imperfections of others as a weapon to eradicate any goodness that may exist within. Every American leader has erred. That is human. It is what is expected. Pay attention to how individuals fess up to their errors and use what is learned to improve. That is what matters. Remember that Lincoln did not start out as the great emancipator. He changed to be one of our better angels. Listen. Listen without interruption. Listen to learn. Listen without thinking of a counterpoint. Roy T. Bennett describes these attributes as listening with curiosity. Use listening as a gift to others. It lets them know that they matter. Let's move to communication. You leave Barlow with strong speaking and writing skills. You participated in Poetry Out Loud, Speak Outs, and submitted a portfolio of writing to be evaluated by educators and community members. You have earned the right to be confident when sharing your ideas. So when should you use these skills? Your communities and nation need you. Members of your class have marched, organized protests, written blogs, recorded webcasts, volunteered time to political campaigns, and debate with friends and family. Continue to share truth with others. Your voice matters. Use it to make a difference. Vote. We end with community, a place where we began 4 years ago in this very auditorium. Your Pollyanna assistant principal welcomed you and stated with pride that Barlow was a special place. I hope you leave thinking the same, that you bleed black and gold. I saw every one of you do something to make this place better. It may have been a hello in the hallway, caring for an ill classmate, processing how gun violence has impacted your generation, or picking up an apple core somebody left in the hallway. These things did not go unnoticed. I could go on all day and share how each of you positively impacted Barlow. Your imperfections never negate the good that you have done. You are resilient. Think of all you have been through your 17 or 18 years. Be proud, be Barlow, go change the world in small and great ways.
Thank you, Dr. Pinn and Mrs. Damaris. At this time, senior members of the Barlow Chorale will present Fly Away Home by Pink Zebra.
I'll ride with the horses, I'll swim through the sea, I'll climb to the mountain tops, won't you come follow me? I'll take time to notice all that I see.
Thank you, Mrs. Whitman and Corral. Our first commencement speaker is Greg Coleman. Greg will be delivering a speech entitled, Forget This Speech.
Forget this speech. Well, folks, it looks like we sold out this year. Let's welcome those joining us today. The Board of Education, Superintendent McMorran and Assistant Superintendent Ugal, our head of school, Dr. Pinn, administrators, faculty, and staff from all of the ER9 schools, families and friends of the graduates, anyone who opened this email by mistake, and of course, my fellow classmates. For the first time ever, this event's very existence was called into question by the COVID-19 pandemic. And there was righteous outrage. Graduation is an important rite of passage, too good to be taken away, pushed off, or forgotten. All I really remember about my middle school graduation is that one of the graduation speeches was about grass and how we were being mowed to perfection. Before I knew it, we had quickly run through our class's names and moved on. If you asked any of us then, though, the event would be of utmost importance. Something bigger was on the horizon. It was on the precipice of coming to Barlow and taking part in the high school experience that we'd heard about from our parents, TV, and older siblings for years. We were excited about what we'd done up to that point, and we were all but assured that the next 4 years would give us more. More freedom, more independence, more friends, and more of a chance to carve our own path. Orientation saw us happily reviewing the hallways and our schedules as we dreamt of what would be when 4 long years began in 4 short days. Once we heard our first 7:25 bell, we learned that some challenges were not covered on Disney Channel. While we had the support of this amazing faculty and our parents, sometimes things didn't work out. We all know a lesson that wasn't clear, a time when being at home or school was working against us, in a period when it felt like the walls were closing in. At times our schedules seemed to fight us and we weren't able to be as independent as we would have liked. Those were the challenges before this March. Nonetheless, there was a lot over these 4 years that will stick with me positively, whether it be as an old joke, an important life lesson, or a useful skill. I won't say where calculus stands in those categories. Some saw a burgeoning career in the arts, while others studied code in hopes of being the next Silicon Valley superstar. In and out of the classroom, there were athletes and orators, musicians and mathematicians. Even if one hobby didn't stick, I can find few students at Barlow who didn't leave with a better idea of who they were. This sounds somewhat romantic now that I say it. It wasn't High School Musical. It was, well, high school. The reason it feels like something more is because it wasn't always guaranteed. The statisticians in the room will remind us, of course, that outcomes for our district are amazing, and that your money is part of a well-structured investment in the future. And I could go on. I'm not saying that at any point anyone from Barlow is doomed, but rather life is at times not ideal despite all of the best intentions and planning. Just ask NASA, or better yet, the CDC. It took willpower, risk-taking, and asking others for help to overcome our challenges. We delved into novel subjects with the aid of our teachers. We took the advice of a classmate and joined clubs we never conceived being a part of, and we met people we didn't know, maybe even distrusted before coming here, only to hold back tears saying goodbye 4 years later. Being in this room is proof that we stayed our course, worked hard and succeeded, and that we can take part in something larger even when it's not on our own terms. The relative uncertainty, we adapted, achieved, and collectively became more than we imagined we could be when we took that last bus ride home from Helen Keller or John Reed. When you, my classmates, arrive at college, be it at Dartmouth, Delaware, or Indiana, the workplace, or somewhere in between, remember that the student life pamphlets and the stories of siblings, alumni, or parents are merely great suggestions. They can create the blueprint for you, but you must ultimately construct your goal, your life, your dream at the next destination. You have the power and likewise the responsibility to make your next 4 years the best they can possibly be regardless. You have the skill set and the imperative to find yourself in 4 years as you are now, pleasantly surprised at how much you've accomplished and unconcerned with who you were 4 years ago. If you run into me in 4 years, I might have forgotten some names, along with my senior synthesis, and you'll probably have unconsciously erased this speech in favor of something new. It may be iconoclastic, but I want you to forget this speech because it means you have a bigger and better future to think about. A future the class of 2020 has spent 18 long years waiting to begin. You've all heard me say, "Good morning, Barlow," but now I'm telling you to go forth and create a life full of drive and self-satisfaction that pulls the covers off for you, combs your hair, and makes you long for the morning so that you can live it again.
Thank you, Greg. Colin Holm-Hansen will now present his commencement speech entitled, "What We Leave Behind Us."
On behalf of the senior class, I'd like to extend my gratitude to the people who made this graduation day possible. To the Board of Education members for discussing policy and constantly laboring to ensure a quality education in our towns for this year and the years to come, thank you. To the Superintendent, Dr. McMorrin, for leading our schools and hearing our concerns, for advocating for us and looking out for our futures, thank you. To our head of school, Dr. Pinn, and assistant principals, Mrs. McTague and Ms. Demarest, for always having a smile on your faces as you held open the doors of Joe Barlow High School, for making sure each school day ran smoothly, and for allowing us to put on amazing events throughout the year, thank you. To administrators, faculty, and staff across all 3 school districts, for dedicating your careers to educate young minds, for giving us your stories of success and failure, and for filling your schools with curious individuals, thank you. To parents and friends, for pushing us when we wanted to give up, for loving us and making sacrifice after sacrifice such that we could succeed, thank you. Now to my fellow classmates. It is an honor to be speaking with you today. Although some of you have been done with school since we went online in mid-March, we are all now officially graduating. A lot has happened to unite us these last 4 years. First of all, we've witnessed unforgettable memories. The girls' volleyball team won 4 titles in a row. Thomas Ricciatelli dunked an alley-oop off the glass against Weston. And Alex Klein-Wasink even pulled the fire alarm in the middle of a torrential downpour. Grace Aremus painted the most beautiful mural I've ever seen. Sean McHale and Cole Crooks created a neural network that interprets sign language. And Claire McCann gave nightmares to opposing teams who just wanted to win a game of softball. We've had some failures along the way too. I, for one, am deeply saddened by the fact that I never found the 3rd floor a senior told me about my first day of freshman year. Finally, we made sacrifices together. The most notable of which was giving up our 2nd semester to stay home as a global pandemic grabbed hold of the world. Now, as much as I love my parents, spending every day locked in the house teaching them how to use FaceTime was not how I envisioned the end of my senior year playing out. But instead of prom and spring sports and a senior banquet, to name a few, that was what happened. Yet in all the bad that came from those things, I was amazed at the response our class had. In fact, the things we achieved during the pandemic have given me tremendous confidence that this graduating class is bound to do tremendous things for the world. For starters, lockdown couldn't stop us from communicating. When there wasn't a spring pep rally, there were bonfires with friends in face masks 6 feet apart. When there was no sports season, there was a beautiful drive-by birthday celebration in honor of Tyler Cummings. There was no senior banquet, but there was Louie's late night live streams, which drew in over 50 people per night to make jokes, laugh, and mess up our sleep schedules. There was no trip to Six Flags, but there was an initiative taken by girls selling clothes online and starting local businesses. We didn't lose touch with our teachers either. There were Google Meets where we chatted away and talked about our learning. Heck, for the first time ever, Mr. Shuminsky responded to an email of mine when I told him I got into college. Now at a glance, these things might not seem overly extraordinary, but I ask you, if a global pandemic cannot stop us from learning, developing our friendships, and being impactful citizens to our communities, can anything really stop us? Our generation has had to grow up rather quickly. Born in the aftermath of 9/11, growing up amidst the tragedies of school shootings and the impact of climate change, and now graduating in the midst of a global pandemic, there isn't much we haven't seen. These things have taught us at a young age that the world can be cruel at times, but they've also shown us that we have the chance to fix these issues and leave our mark in history. To my classmates, I know it was difficult giving up the last 3 months of our time together. While everyone makes sacrifices at some point in their lives, some far greater than missing school, it is rather unfortunate to be stripped of the things we had been promised for 4 hard years of work. Let's never forget what happened to us and spread our message such that it never happens again. However, I think another lesson we need to take away from all this is how crucial it is to express your gratitude to your friends and family. Relationships all suffer from entropy. That is, they deteriorate over time. You have to put an effort to reverse that entropy. School will likely not be the only thing in your life that is suddenly taken from you. It is possible that the same will happen to someone you care about in life. And I know from experience that the worst feeling in the world is wondering whether someone you cared about knew that you cared about them after they are gone. Lastly, remember that there is an open door for us to step into and create change. Those of you who know me know that I have a deep appreciation of space. I think one of the most powerful things about astronomy is the nature of high-mass stars. When these noble giants reach the end of their lives, they create one of the most powerful explosions in the known universe, scattering their innards throughout the cosmos. The atoms of those innards are the same atoms that go on to create planets, species, and even you. You're made of the stuff of stars, which died billions of years ago. Yet their impact lives on within you and within everything that exists because of them. If our class continues to show the drive that we've shown in this time of great peril, I can assure you that our impact will be remembered long after we were gone, like that of a high-mast star. Congratulations to the class of 2020.
Thank you, Colin. At this time, I would like to introduce Grace McDonald, Secretary for the class of 2020, to the stage to present an endowment for the class of 2020.
On behalf of my fellow class officers and the class of 2020, it is with great honor and pride that an endowment of $1,000 be made to the Tyler Cummings Memorial Scholarship Fund in recognition of our fellow classmate Tyler "Tyman" Cummings. This will help to fund the Tyler Cummings Memorial Scholarship of Excellency and the Tyler Cummings Memorial Impact Award. The Tyler Cummings Memorial Scholarship of Excellency is awarded to students who exemplify a commitment to improving the quality of life for others and their school community and persistently lead by example. They continually demonstrate empathy, kindness, and love for Joe Barlow spirit, much like Tyler did throughout his life. Tyler Cummings Memorial Impact Award is awarded to students with a particular emphasis placed on efforts that identify a community need, such as commitment of inclusion for all classmates and helps to bring awareness to rare diseases. Tyler lost his long battle with an illness this past year. His spirit lives on with the class of 2020. We miss you, Tyler.
I now welcome Dr. Stephanie Pearson-Ugal, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, to provide this year's special recognitions.
Hello. It is my pleasure to recognize the top graduates of the class of 2020 in alphabetical order with the schools they will be attending. Gregory Coleman, Norwalk Community College. Sophia Danuzar, Johns Hopkins University. Olivia Fossman, Cornell University. Colin Holm-Hansen, Columbia University. Jack Ledbetter, University of Richmond. Catherine Leo, Bryn Mawr College. Sean McHale, Vanderbilt University. Owen O'Reilly, University of the Sciences. Skylar Ray Pritchard, Worcester Polytechnic Institute. Zachary Short, Dartmouth College. Ekaterina Taylor Yedumiuva, Tufts University. Hannah Tadawis, Northeastern University. Sarah Tadawis, Northeastern University. Alex Klein Wassink, Harvard University. Luke Wergeles, University of Maryland. Sarah Weisenfeld, University of Connecticut. Congratulations. It is now my pleasure to share the following students who are planning to attend the armed services. We would like to recognize them and thank them for their dedication and service to our country. Daniel Allgood, United States Army. Tanner Hansen, United States Army. Kaner Rojas, United States Army, Active Reserves. Thank you. Finally, it's my pleasure to recognize the retirees this year. After serving the communities of Easton and Reading, we would like to recognize the following faculty and staff who will be retiring from Joel Barlow High School at the end of this year. Charles Dietlich, science teacher, 17 years. Rosemary Reber, transition coordinator, 21 years. Patricia Roscoe, director of special education, 32 years. And finally, Dr. Thomas McMorran, superintendent of schools and former head of school of Joel Barlow High School, 13 years in Easton, Reading, and Region 9, 35 years as an educator. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pearson-Ugal. At this time, I welcome Dr. Thomas McMorran, Superintendent of Schools, to address the class.
Dear class of 2020, see if this sounds familiar. It is the year 429 BC. The Athenians are locked in an international war with the Spartans for domination of Greece. Their capital is resplendent with an enormous public works building project, including construction of the Parthenon and several open-air theaters. The culture is making advances in every aspect of art, music, medicine, mathematics, and science. Socrates, a brilliant but somewhat annoying man about town, is 41 years old, and if he heads your way, it's best to cross the street. He wants to ask you for a definition of virtue. But this is also a sad year for Athens. Its great visionary leader, Pericles, has died. In fact, the entire city had been directed to move behind their long protective walls as a Spartan army pillaged their farmlands. This self-quarantine led to an outbreak of the plague. A fifth of the population caught it, thousands died. We have faced war, fever, and infection before, and we are still here. It is August 15th, 1914. A ceremony to honor the engineering marvel called the Panama Canal is scheduled. At a staggering sum of $350 million, under Theodore Roosevelt's leadership, the United States has overcome a series of technical problems to bring this project to a successful conclusion. Part of the formula for success involved strict adherence to anti-malarial protocols. The U.S. imposed drastic measures to protect the lives of workers, engineers, and overseers, and by doing so, were able to make huge progress in a small amount of time. We have taken over huge international challenges before, and we are still here. It is July of 1932 in Washington, D.C. What began as a handful of World War I veterans protesting the Great Depression has swollen to an encampment of the National Mall of nearly 44,000 veterans who are demanding an early payout of their promised bonuses for having served in the Great War. Their protest contributes to the downfall of Herbert Hoover and the rise of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. We have experienced political turmoil before, and we are still here. It is the summer of 1968. In April on the 4th, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. With our country in shock, on the 6th of June, Bobby Kennedy, presidential candidate, was also shot to death. Rioting exploded in more than 100 cities and shook the nation to its core. 1968 was also a time when the American space program sent Apollo 8 to orbit the moon at Christmas. Astronauts Frank Borman, William Anders, and James Lovell saw the Earth in all of her glory for the first time and took the picture that has come to be called Earthrise. Citizens in the street exercising their First Amendment rights, American astronauts launching from Cape Canaveral in Florida. Sound familiar? We have a long history of striving to build a better, more inclusive culture. We have applied science and collaboration on a massive scale to overcome impossible odds. Our hearts have been broken due to the darkest horrors of how people mistreat each other, and we have soared to the highest heights with courage and joy. As Dr. King once told a crowd, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. It was his conviction and his faith that gave him the inspiration to lead. It is time for you to lead or to follow. As a high school graduate, you can no longer stay on the side. Here we stand in the summer of 2020. You will have heard many hundreds of times over the last few months that these are unprecedented times. Well, I hope you will agree with me with my correction when I say these are precedented times. It is our time, it is your time now as the class of 2020 to wade into the fray and make this a better world. It is time for us to say his name, George Floyd, and demand that we live up to our own pledge to be a land of liberty and justice for all. Let me quote President Kennedy. Let the word go forth from this time and place to friend and foe alike, that the torch has been passed to a new generation of Americans, born in this century, tempered by war, disciplined by a hard and bitter peace, proud of our ancient heritage, and unwilling to witness or permit the slow undoing of those human rights to which this nation has always been committed, and to which we are committed today, at home and around the world. Let every nation know, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe, to assure the survival and success of liberty. The impact of COVID-19 on our species has awakened the American spirit. Native Americans, African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Caucasian Americans, Asian Americans, Middle Eastern Americans, Americans who hail from the four corners of the world, from Iran and India and Egypt and Pakistan and Russia and our great Southern American neighbors, recent immigrants and longtime residents are awake. The American people have been called a sleeping giant on more than one occasion, but we are awake now. We awoke on December 7th, 1941. We were awakened by the McCarthy hearings and the threat posed by Sputnik. We awoke to fight the AIDS crisis. We saw the wall fall in Berlin and a new day rise in Iraq. We have fed the world, fought off Ebola in Africa, stood up to tyrants, and we have been at our best when we joined as residents of that shining city on a hill of which President Reagan spoke so powerfully in 1981. You, the class of 2020, it is your turn. If you dislike injustice, don't wait for your elders. Get educated and get involved. If you dislike social distancing, get educated, find new vaccines. If you worry about the environment, get educated and run for office. If you don't want others running corporations, learn how to start a business of your own. I know that today feels like a sad compromise. We will face more sad days. But the good news is that Americans always believe in a brighter tomorrow. You are the good news. You are that bright tomorrow. The joy and the strife of this world is yours to hold or to change. Change it. Thank you. I, Dr. Thomas McMorran, have the great pleasure as Superintendent of Schools to certify to you that these, the members of the class of 2020, having completed a course of studies as prescribed by the Region 9 Board of Education in accordance with the Connecticut State Statute, are fully qualified to receive their diplomas, and I attest to this with pride. The names of the class of 2020 will be read by Dr. Pinn, Assistant Superintendent and Head of School.
Thank you, Dr. McMorran. It is now my pleasure to invite Dr. Pinn, our Head of School and Assistant Superintendent, back to the podium to present the class of 2020.
Tabitha Patrice Aime. Constantine Albano. Daniel Allgood. Nicole Angelescu. Erik Areklett. Ian Jared Asanovic. Camden Asplund. Robert Nash Babcock. Stephanie Ballas. Evan Baran. Sam Westerly Bartro. Hayden Catherine Beach. Robert Yong Bruce. Madeline Bridget Burke. Eleonore Burns. Gordon Parker Caldwell, Julio Calish, Ryan Calish, Justin Alexander Calvert, Erin Carroll, Simon J. Castonguay, Emily Cavalieri, Annalie Celino, Isabella Claire Cohen, Melissa Colasante, Gregory Jared Coleman, Caitlin Collins, Jackson J. Connor, Aiden Michael Cook, Cole Alistair Crooks, Michael Cruz, Tyler C. Cummings, David James Cusick, David Dugelli, Sophia Marie Danazar, Austin Anthony DeLuca, Leah DeMellis, Olivia DeSpirito, Benjamin P. Devine, Mia D'Amico, Alexa DiCamillo, Dylan Thomas DeChico, Ryan DiDomenico, Nicholas DiStefano, Grace Tora Doramus, Louis Dortenzio Jr., Treasa Dougall, Liam Drury, Patrick T. Durkin, Elisabeth Eastus, Kayleigh Danielle Emanuelson, Ariana McIntyre Engler, Harry Falowski, Olivia Eleftheria Fassman, Liam Jackson Feltman, John Michael Florkowski III, Jake Ian Phones, Rachel Jane Fox, Joe Francoletti, Nicholas Francoletti, Connor Frederickson, David Poole Fuhrer, Theresa Galban, Michael James Gannam, Luke G. Gardone, Clark Gilmore, Phily Giorgianni Jr., Julia July, Sarah Wren Gambos, Alexia Giselle Gonzalez, Olivia Gonzalez. Amanda Adelaide Gormley. Eve Grassi. Annie Elizabeth Gregory. Kayleigh Griffin. William Fitzgerald Grobe. Krina Gutu. Aaliyah Taylor Haffen. Samuel Halpern. Ryan J. Hancock. Tanner Dean Hansen. Alexandra Jordan Harris. Julia Hartman. Elisabeth Herman. Lilly Herman. Christian Thomas Hayden. Cameron Hirsch. Colin Holm-Hansen. Olivia Houlahan. Jesse Hubicki. Brett Hugo. Henry Isolino. Logan Philip Johnke. Jeffrey Johnson. Catherine I. Johnson. Gabrielle Johnston. Saskia Karm. Kiernan T. Kelly. Isabel Devon Kennedy. Kaylee Rose Keys. Sage Kumar Khanna. Alex Klein Wasink. Melissa Contagioganis. Curtis Koopman. Maxwell Krug. Isabel Labor. Claire E. Lamb. Ryan Lauder. Jack Morales Ledbetter. Dylan Jason Leone. Kira Eliza Levin. Carson S. Lecastre. Catherine Liu. Sydney May Lockwood. John Tiernan Lynch. Rory Horgan Lynch. Catherine May McDonald. Grace McDonald. Cameron A. Manny. Nicholas James Maratta. Josiah Thomas Mars. Anthony Martinez. Catherine Louise Matsuka. Rebecca Renee Morrow. Jonathan Weldon McAdoo, Claire McCann, Madeline R. McHale, Sean Ryan McHale, Isabella Merrill, Eric Milokovic, Anthony Mitri, Brian Morales, Summer Alexandra Muckbill, Zoe Elizabeth Newbolt, Alexander L. Newell, Jessica Shea Nimmons, Liberty Star Nocito, Maxwell Nonenmacher, Matthew Edward Michael Nume, Owen O'Reilly, Madison Opolinski, Adam Joseph Ortiz, River J. Paltoff, Niall Powa, Kaya Patron, Natalie M. Piro, Lauren Nadia Pizzino, Grace Caitlin Pomposello, James Patrick Porter, Colby Allen Powers, Skylar Ray T. Pritchard, Eric J. Rout, Lane Reed, Thomas Robert Riccatelli, Seth Morpheus Rogers, Timothy John Hannon Rogers, Kaner Rojas Jr., Samantha Romaniello, Paige Alexandra Romano, Danny Rooney, David M. Rossi, Hunter Rudenis, Jared Rowland, Jenna Devi Salvatore, Kira Nicole Schoenberg, Leah Blake Sharon, Erin Claire Sheehan, Zachary D. Short, Christopher A. Shuford, Quinn S. Sadiki, Caden B. Simons, Ella Grace Simpson, Emma Haley Simpson, Carolyn Kelly Spear, McKenna A. Stablin, Jillian Ann Stark, Laura Ambrose Stauffer, Madigan Stichter, Madeline Nicole Seitz, Matthew Allen Son, William John Sutton, Kayleigh Rachel Zogas, Margaret Lynn Taylor, Ekaterina Mikhailovna Yedumieva, Hannah Amy Tadauas, Sarah Kelly Tadauas, Carolyn Kumi Teed, Carson Teed, Robert Paul Tremont, Gabriella Tuccinardi, Giacomo Tuccinardi, Anthony R. Turretino, Calixa Euquilis, Matthew Peter Urso, Michael William Venus, Erin Marie Webdale, Zoe H. Wegener, Harrison Robert Wenig, Hannah P. Wergeles, Luke Michael Wergeles, Carolyn Nicole Wexler, Buster William Whaley, Hannah Lou Wheatley, Andrew C. White, Sarah Weisenfeld, Sierra Simone Wilcox, Cooper Wiles, Nathaniel A. Witt, Arnold Wright IV, Jessica Ann Wojcinski, Megan Zapula, Stephen G. Zygmunt, Carl LaPere Zuanelli.
Let's be honest. Freshman year, we came to Barlow clueless. We entered the intimidating brick building with little understanding of the overly complicated hallway system and the misconception that there might be a third floor somewhere. We were uprooted from what we'd grown to know and love in middle school and thrown into another universe. And what reassurances were we given that all would be well? A day-long orientation from which we struggled to retain information and the unconvincing reminder that education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire. Though a 100-year-old quote seems impersonal and distant, as a graduating senior reflecting on my experiences at Barlow, I can't help but recognize the value in William Butler Yeats' words. Through the past 4 years at Barlow, we've worked hard, turning in lens papers, science research, and junior writing portfolios. All this work speaks not only to our capabilities as Barlow graduates, but to our potential as innovators, thinkers, and leaders. In the midst of a global pandemic, this message carries more weight than it ever has before. History is being written, and as educated young adults, we are positioned to influence it. Thanks to Barlow, our fires are lit well and burning strong. And now, class of 2020, it's time to light up the world. Though it's behind laptop screens and face masks that you receive this message, I mean it no less. Class of 2020, please join me in turning our tassels from the right side to the left side of our graduation caps. Congratulations, we are officially graduates of Joe Barlow High School. We did it.